David Martinez saw a poor nurse sleeping at a bus stop. Her secret breaks him and changes everything. The rain fell like bullets that Tuesday night, turning the empty streets into rivers of reflected streetlights. David Martinez pulled his expensive coat tighter as he walked toward his car, tired after another long day at his investment firm. At 35, he had everything he thought he wanted: a penthouse apartment, a luxury car, and more money than he could spend. But tonight felt different. Maybe it was the cold, or maybe it was the emptiness that had been growing inside him lately. As he drove through the quiet city streets, his headlights caught something that made him slow down. At the old bus stop near the hospital, a young woman sat hunched over, her head resting against the glass wall. She wore faded blue scrubs that were soaked through from the rain. David's first thought was to keep driving. He was tired, and getting involved with strangers wasn't his thing. But something about the scene wouldn't let him go. The woman looked so small, so vulnerable in the storm. He pulled over and sat in his warm car for a moment, watching her through the rain-streaked window. She was shivering, even in her sleep. Her hands were wrapped around a small bag, holding it close like it contained everything she owned. "This is crazy," David muttered to himself, but he was already getting out of the car. He walked over and gently tapped her shoulder. "Miss? Are you okay?" The woman startled awake, her eyes wide with fear for a moment before she took in his concerned expression. She was younger than he'd thought, maybe mid-20s, with kind eyes and exhaustion written across her face. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, standing up. "I wasn't bothering anyone, I was just—" "Hey, it's okay," David said softly. "I'm not with security or anything. I just saw you out here in the rain and got worried. Are you waiting for a bus?" The woman, her name tag read, Sarah, looked down at her feet. "The last bus left an hour ago. I needed to rest for a minute before walking home." "Walking? In this weather? Where do you live?" "About 5 miles from here," Sarah admitted. "It's not that far." David felt his heart sink. 5 miles in this freezing rain? That's way too far to walk in this storm. "Let me give you a ride." Sarah shook her head quickly. "No, thank you. I don't want to be any trouble. I've done this walk before." "In weather like this?" She hesitated. "Well, no. But I'll be fine." David studied her face. There was pride there, mixed with desperate exhaustion. "Look, I know you don't know me, but I promise I'm safe. My name is David Martinez. I work at Martinez and Associates downtown. You can even call someone to let them know you're getting a ride if it makes you feel better." Sarah looked at the rain, then back at David. Her teeth were chattering now. "Are you sure it's not too much trouble?" "No trouble at all." As they walked to his car, David noticed how thin Sarah was, how her scrubs hung loose on her small frame. When she settled into the passenger seat, she closed her eyes for a moment, as if the warmth was the most beautiful thing she'd felt in days. "So you work at the hospital?" David asked as they started driving. "Yes, I'm a nurse in the ICU," Sarah said, her voice soft. "I just finished a double shift." "That sounds exhausting. How long was your shift?" 18 hours today. Sometimes it goes longer if we're short-staffed, which we usually are." David glanced at her in surprise. 18 hours? That's insane. When do you sleep? Sarah gave a tired laugh. "When I can." Sometimes I catch a few hours in the break room between shifts. It's better than going home and having to come right back. As they drove through the city, Sarah gave him directions to a neighborhood David had never been to. The buildings were old and run down, with broken streetlights and boarded-up windows. When they stopped in front of a small apartment building, David felt a pang in his chest. "This is me," Sarah said. "Thank you so much for the ride. You probably saved my life tonight." "Sarah, wait." David turned to look at her. "Can I ask you something? Why were you sleeping at the bus stop instead of taking a taxi or calling someone?" Sarah's cheeks flushed red. She looked down at her hands. I spent my last $20 on groceries yesterday. I won't get paid until Friday, and even then." She trailed off. "Even then, what?" "Most of my paycheck goes to other things. Important things." She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "My little brother Tommy is sick. Really sick. He's only 12, and he has leukemia. The treatments are so expensive, and insurance doesn't cover everything. My mom works 2 jobs, but it's still not enough." David felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. "Sarah, I'm so sorry." "It's okay," she said quickly, wiping her eyes. "Tommy's getting better. The doctors say he's responding well to treatment. That's all that matters. I'd work 100 double shifts if it meant helping him get well. What about you? When do you take care of yourself?" Sarah smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I take care of myself by taking care of others. That's what nurses do. Besides, seeing Tommy smile when I visit him gives me all the energy I need." She opened the car door. "Thank you again, David. You're a good person." As David watched her disappear into the building, he sat in his car for a long time. He thought about his own life, his expensive dinners, his designer clothes, his complaints about small inconveniences. Here was someone who had so little but gave so much. The next day, David couldn't concentrate at work. He kept thinking about Sarah walking 5 miles in the rain, working 18-hour shifts, sleeping in break rooms. He kept thinking about a 12-year-old boy fighting for his life. That afternoon, he made some calls. First, he called the hospital and asked to speak with the ICU supervisor. He explained that he wanted to make an anonymous donation to help with medical expenses for patients who couldn't afford treatment. The supervisor was more than happy to help. Then he called a friend who worked in transportation and asked about bus routes to the hospital. When he learned that the last bus really did leave at 10 p.m., leaving night shift workers stranded, he had an idea. Over the next week, David found himself driving by the hospital every night after work. He didn't see Sarah again, but he saw other exhausted healthcare workers waiting at bus stops, starting long walks home in the dark. On Friday evening, David parked near the hospital and waited. Just after 11 p.m., he saw Sarah walking toward the bus stop, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. He got out of his car. "Need a ride?" Sarah looked up, surprised. "David? What are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood," he lied. "Hop in." As they drove, Sarah seemed different, lighter somehow. "You know what?" she said. "Something amazing happened today. Someone made an anonymous donation to the hospital specifically for families who can't afford treatment. Tommy's next 3 months of treatment are completely covered." David kept his eyes on the road, fighting to keep his expression neutral. "That's incredible. You must be so relieved." I am. I actually slept for 6